Sharyn, the NISSAN Whistleblower. Just kind of talking about what I believe in America. I'm so frustrated because I think there's a big misunderstanding about what America is all about. America is about freedom. It's about responsibility. It's about integrity. It's gotten a little confused because people in the Republican Party they're battling for the heart of the party, and I don't think they understand what the heart of the party is really about. Let's go back in history. Let's go back to World War II. After World War II, what happened is during World War II, we had to form alliances. We actually worked with the Russians, and we were able to defeat the Nazis, but also to beat Japan. The main reason why we went into the war, if you really look at it, was because the Japanese, they hit our boat, at Pearl Harbor. So when you see what happened, we fought that war on many fronts, and we worked with the Russians, and we were able to get rid of Hitler. We were able to, win Iwo Jima, and we were able to do what Americans do best, and that's fight for freedom, because we believe when we started our country that people have the right to choose which religion they participate, choose who they want to spend time with. We're about freedom. We're about freedom of religion, freedom of speech. Now, so we look at World War II and we form these alliances, and then we had to send in intelligence people to work with these nations to figure out how to split up the world. And my grandfather was one of those people that went to Korea, and there was a lot going on. You see, the Japanese, while they were fighting us, they were committing horrible atrocities against the Chinese. And there were a lot of things going on in Korea too. I mean, these people, they slaughtered each other. I mean, it's almost unthinkable, the masses and that were basically destroyed over ideology. But my grandfather was one of these people, and I have no clue what he did. I was told he was a peace treaty negotiator, and in my heart, that's what he will always be, because he's my grandpa, and I love him. But, okay, so then what happened was in the 50s, the industry that really dominated the world as we know today is the airline industry. You see, the airline industry was able to transport people that were basically doing the nation building. We were going to the Middle East, we were going to Africa, we were going to Japan, Asia, Southeast Asia, blah, 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 blah. And my mom was the chief flight attendant for an airline called Transocean. Now, that airline was subsidized by the CIA. Now basically, at the end of the day, airline transportation in the 50s was basically a great way to get people together. They'd sit on a long flight for 10, 20, 30 hours. Sometimes they'd have to stop in Wake Island, have a barbecue. But it was a great way to plant somebody next to you and to basically forced conversation. You could information swap. It was a safe way to basically do diplomatic work. And so the airline industry in the 50s and then 60s kind of shaped the way that the power brokers were created. People that had access to the airlines had access to the power. So then we get into Vietnam. And we get into our great friendship with the French. Oh, the French, they weren't the greatest allies in World War II, and, let's just say during the Cold War, they sucked. So the French are basically in Vietnam, and they stayed there because of Michelin, the tire company. You see, Michelin had these rubber tree plants, and they were very lucrative. And literally, the people in the American government, if you were to kill an innocent civilian, you had to pay that civilian in Vietnam like $120 for the loss of one of their loved ones. But if we were to accidentally destroy a French rubber tree owned by Michelin plantation, we had to pay $600. So basically, a rubber tree was valued at 5 times the value of a life. And that animosity and hostility and the way the French led Vietnam when they colonized Vietnam, they were tyrants. The French were evil, twisted people. And we were supporting the French because of our love for, democracy, and they were an ally, kind of. Anyways, long story short, the French pulled out, which they always do. And, I have they drive me crazy. So, but anyways, the French pulled out, and then so all of a sudden, here we are, in Vietnam, and we had a lot of contractors at that time, invest in equipment, to transport the troops to Vietnam, and it was a big industry, and there were a lot of jobs being created. So one of the reasons why we stayed in Vietnam so long was because it was a way to put people to work. So there are a bunch of neocons that actually really believed that going to war was a great way to create jobs. And let me tell you, that's where the neocons split, because some of the neocons did not believe that, some did. Now, I was related to people that thought it was a great way to put people to work. And not going into any real details, I'm just letting you know that when the war ended, it was really basically because the American people got frustrated, and then what we did was we got smart. And one thing that was debated was the draft. You see, the one big conflict about Vietnam is that your kids had to serve or they were not patriotic. And a lot of people figured out ways not to go to Vietnam because a lot of people didn't want their kids in Vietnam because a lot of people died or they lost legs or, you know, the Agent Orange. Oh, by the way, the Agent Orange was, thank you again to the French. You see, they started buying rubber tree plantations in Brazil, and they formed an alliance with Brazil. And Mr. Kennedy, ooh, gotta love Mr. Kennedy, his wife was French and they loved the French, and what they decided to do was to defoliate the enemy, and they came up with some twisted reason to basically put 10 times the amount of defoliant needed. That would basically kill the area and the soil, so basically that they could not grow any more rubber trees. So really the whole Agent Orange deal is some, you know, program to basically help the economy in Brazil, and that was one of the issues with Kennedy. So, and that'll never go out because the mainstream media loved Kennedy. Kennedy was Camelot. Kennedy was great. Well, yeah, Kennedy was great if you're a French and you own the rubber tree plants that were now grown in Brazil, because now you would never have any competition with the people that you were abusing in Vietnam, that they could never have an industry of their own because you've defoliated, you know, and you've created that. So anyways, long story short, you know, so that was the issue with Kennedy. And I know nothing about his assassination or anything like that. I know my grandfather did know the CIA director because they belonged to the same country club, you know, for many, 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 many years. But I was never told anything about the Kennedy assassination. A lot of people give me some ideas, and you know what? I don't know. I have no clue, for the record. So then we have Nixon. Great. So he keeps the wars going, and we got all this Nixonian crap going. And let me tell you, I don't know what was going on. I was just raised during that era, and I was a little kid. I traveled all over the world with my mom, who was formerly the chief flight attendant for Transocean, and she was well connected, and I just, anything I have to say is hearsay. We don't know what it is. It's probably just pontificating. I can just tell you those people creep me out. Done. So now we have the whole Watergate deal. Oh, by the way, my mom was a Democrat. I was a Republican. I don't know why I was a Republican, except I found out later when I got to meet the publisher of the Contra Costa Times, Dean Lusher. He, in 1984, took me in under his wing, and because he knew that I knew that a lot of the creepy people, and I don't know what I did, you know, I was just a low-level friendly fixture. And basically, Contra Costa County had the demographics of America. We had Hispanic people, black people, Asian people, we had urban, we had rural, we had agriculture, we had a lot of different industries. So I was able to do research. And I did that, and you know, went to conventions, I went to parties, I hung out with people, and then I just told people who I was hanging out with. That's all I did. I really didn't do much. But I did enough to later in life become a big threat to people that were unethical. And I think because I knew the creepy people from the 50s and 60s via my family. I mean, really, it was the people in the 70s that I physically saw, but it was just because of my family that I think that I was labeled the #2 security risk at Nissan. Because I don't understand anything. I mean, I really was, I like to say I was an airhead. Basically, you know, that's why, you know, I didn't know what was going on around me. I didn't understand. I knew it didn't feel right. I knew that people were pontificating, talking. It was just a lot of it was a chess game. It was basically global chess for democracies, for power, for whatever, and I don't understand. And I still don't understand. But what I understand is that it was real. And I understand that things happened that were not okay. And you know what? I don't have any information that would be any reason to have me harmed. And I don't understand why Carlos Ghosn, whose dad was also in the airline industry during that era, who was a power broker, has decided to make me such a big threat. Except for the fact that they did some very unethical things. And I'm one of those people that I never profited from all that unethical behavior, but Carlos Ghosn did. And Carlos Ghosn used his connections. And there's nothing wrong with using your connections, except for the fact you're using connections that were based on blood money, based on going back to World War II, about the assets that were taken away from the Jews. And that's the foundation of this corruption and this fraud. And the people that were connected all the way back to World War II are now connected to President Barack Obama. It's a long, complicated, twisted thing. I've explained it to Mark Silverman, and he understands. And he understands that, you know, this Operation Condor, that yes, my family knew about it, and I don't know much. I just know that I don't know. I don't know what Americans' involvement was. I don't know anything. But Carlos Ghosn will know. Carlos Ghosn will know about the Lockerbie cover-up, about issues. A lot of it had to do with drugs and different things. So basically, Carlos Ghosn, the chairman of NISSAN North America, chairman of Nissan Motors and Renault, he needs to be questioned by Congress, because you do not make a woman who is just the child of a family that had CIA connections, you do not make that person the #2 security risk of a major car maker unless you're guilty of something. And I believe that Carlos Ghosn knows. He knows the players in major events that have happened in the world. He knows from his father. He knows from the people he's hired. He knows. I think the Lockerbie families deserve to know the truth about how that plane went down. I believe Carlos Ghosn knows. It's time for people to show some respect. I will never know the truth about my family. I will never know the truth about me. But I want the Lockerbie families to have the truth. I talked to a guy who's connected to the Bay of Pigs. He will never know the truth. And we will live with the unknown. But the known is that the unknown can now be put to rest. And that means let's just have some transparency. Let's have some ethical people take over. That's why when I discovered that Barack Obama had connected himself with the creepy people from the era that I grew up in, I have become a Republican again. And now I'm fighting for America, because I love America. And America can be what it was intended to be, a place for respect for all people. Thank you.